And when we're talking about the people that were receiving the prize before, I mean, of course, there's one person I have to mention, which is one of your predecessors, who was getting the prize 20 years before you. It was Vjosa. And again, in this connection, events. And it was a special relationship that he had with President Vjosa. It was, I would say, a relationship that was going far beyond a professional relationship. There was really a personal friendship there, all the way to the extent that when my father was wearing a shawl, he was always kind of relating to President Vjosa, who historically, as we know, was always wearing a shawl. And he was getting, at the time, the Pudlov-Kalergi Prize for his clear pan-European engagement for an independent Kosovo. And before that, of course, I think one has to mention that out of the political situation he was growing from, he was also, and my father was very much engaged in that, the European Parliament, the Sakharov Prize. I always like to mention that it's the Sakharov Prize for the freedom of thought. And that was at the time not something which was automatically and understandable, but I think it was incredibly important that he at that stage was first awarded the Sakharov Prize, later the Pudlov-Kalergi Prize, to kind of show this historic dimension. This was in 2004. We should not forget that 1 year before that happened was the Thessaloniki Summit, which was talking about Southeast Europe, how Southeast Europe would get a perspective of the European Union, and the importance for this region of Europe, that this region of Europe would actually have for the stability and security in Europe that would develop here. The necessity for stability and security has not changed. We are in the middle of a new structuring of Europe, and we have seen this within the last 110 years, several times, that a complete new structuring of Europe was taking place. We have seen it in 1918 after the First World War, in 1945 after the Second World War. We've seen it again in 1989, and this was a little bit of a botched restructuring, I would say. We were all very happy when the Iron Curtain was falling and the good part of Europe was gaining its freedom. But what happened in the West was that the West basically was cashing into their into a perceived security, and they were not investing into the necessary security. The peace dividend was cashed in, and it was not enough invested into the security of the continent, which basically was leading us to an existential question to all of Europeans, and that is, do we want to play a role in the world in the future, or are we just passengers on the train of history? And I think the Balkan region was understanding much more the development that was happening and the dangers that were engaged in it, that they were going through several wars and conflict in order to understand this. Whereas the rest of Europe did rely on the US and did not really understand the problem of that concept.